to go out for the walk? You want to go for the walk? Oh, okay, hold on. Get my jacket on. We had a failure on my jacket. I think Mom actually fixed the green one. It did the same thing, and now this one has given way. Oh well, I mean, I wear this thing constantly, so I can't really complain. Okay, hold on here, buddy. Okay, I gotta work on that door handle. It's getting, I don't know if it's I think it's actually those two things that need some work. Not the handle, but the latches. Come on, let's go. Okay. Hi everyone, good morning. I hope y'all are doing great today. We have another cloudy sky day. It has been, I've talked about it in past videos, it has been a wet and cloudy winter season out here. You know, once the heat ended, see, like this morning, I don't see a lot of dew. We've been waking up to such heavy dew that it looks like it rained overnight, and that's pretty common this year. A lot of interesting clouds. But there is some blue sky over there. But I just looked at the 10-day forecast, and we've got a windy day forecast coming up, which we haven't had really any windstorms to speak of this season. It's been a pretty mild wind season. That sometimes can be the worst. And even when we do have any wind, there's no dust or sand blowing around because the ground is so moist. I mean, look at the background of that shot with all the grasses and everything. I'd like to know how these grasses get out here. That looks like regular lawn grass. Come on. Okay. So it's just been a very wet winter out here. And after 2 years of drought winters, you know, it's a good change. So it's just, we're coming up into the end of the first week of the new year, 2026. And something happened out here. If you watch other traveling channels, you may have already heard about what happened. It's one of those things that's, at least in my mind, and I know in other people's because I talked to them about it, it's a constant concern. I wouldn't call it a fear, but it's a constant concern that I think anyone traveling in an RV should have in the back of their mind. And then when you throw into that mix homemade RV, you know, like mine and a lot of other ones, that concern can become even larger because you did everything yourself and you're maybe not a professional at it, and so there's a handful of things that are always in the back of my mind that are concerns and things that used to cause me to get pretty wound up back when we first started traveling. So we're going to take our walk, and when we get back to camp, I'm going to sit down and we're going to talk about this because it's pretty scary, honestly. Every time that something like this happens, it's pretty scary. So I got to pause video and we'll pick this back up at camp. You want to get some dinners? Come on. Come on. Now, I didn't mention we had a slight failure on my step here. You remember my friend welded this last year for me, and it held perfectly. And then finally one of the legs, it's that back corner one, so I kind of put all my weight up on this corner when we step on it. He just happened to pull in the other day on his motorcycle. They were riding by and saw us out, and I told him what had happened, and he said he'll weld it again, no problem. We looked at it, and he thinks he should be able to get it fixed. So whether we do or not, I don't know. I'm not trying to be a burden on him, you know. I mean, these are like $35. The real pisser is last year when this broke, I ordered a new one, the black version with it's either green or yellow sticky tape on it, you know, the texture tape. And because then my friend welded this and fixed it, so I gave the other one away to another friend of mine, you know, still in the box, brand new, gave it away, and now I'm kind of kicking myself in the rear for that, but what are you gonna do? You wanna get some dinners? What is that hanging out of your mouth? Don't put that over my leg. Let me get you some dinners, okay? All right. Can you take care of that? Here. Okay. Okay. All right. It's Lefty's breakfast time. I've been doing his water on the stove here in the dead of winter. You know, I was using the kettle, but it pulls a lot of power for, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half. And it's easy enough to use the stove, so I guess I should turn it on now. So I've been doing that for the last several weeks instead of my kettle, but the rest of the year I use the kettle for sure. Then he gets his hip and joint supplements. He gets 4 of them. Pretty sure Cindy sent these. Thank you, Cindy. And then his special spoon. And I don't mean there's something special about it, but it's a specific spoon that I use for just his food. Now I've got to get in the fridge, so I had to move y'all because you were sitting on my fridge. And then he gets fresh ground beef. I made a hamburger steak yesterday. Any of you that you just make a big hamburger patty and fry it up like it's a steak, or like you're making a hamburger, but you don't put it on a bun. So Lefty and I are sharing this hamburger, and I get this right in town at the Coyote grocery. They make it right there. So it's always super fresh. And I warm the water up for him. And I can hear him outside doing a little bit of talking because he can probably smell it, I'm sure, but he can hear the noises. He knows what all these noises are. And this stirs up really nice. The ground beef kind of cooks in the hot water. Give him a little bit more water. There we that's looking good. Come on, pup, let's get your dinner. Come on, let's get your dinners. Come on. There you go. Go ahead. There you go. Oh, you smell that? Oh, I see you licking your chops. There you go. Go ahead. Get it. He plays this little game where he stares at it. There you go. Okay. Oh, battery's about to die. So that's how I make Lefty's breakfast every morning. Oh, my neighbor Chris is working on something over there, so we might have a little bit of background noise. So we're back from our walk. Lefty has been fed his gourmet breakfast, and it might not look like it, but it's coming up on 9:30 a.m. and the sun is up technically, but it's hidden behind a pretty thick bank of clouds right now, which has been a pretty consistent theme. And there's a neighbor up top with a couple of really big dogs, but he's just barking at a visitor next door who he knows everybody, but he has to bark at them. So let me get back to the topic that I kind of touched on when we were walking earlier. You're going to stay right here with me, buddy, okay, until everything calms down. What are you burping at me for? It's from that big breakfast he had. So back, those of you that have been around on the channel for a long time, you know that more so in the past that there are things that can get me kind of tense and wound up. And I always refer to it as getting wound up, but you know, it's how my brain is wired. And looking back through my life, I've come to realize that the way that I am is not the way that everyone is. You know, when you're young and you're reacting to situations in a certain way, you don't know any different because all you know is what you're feeling and you figure everybody else is the same way. Well, come to find out as I've gotten older, everybody isn't the same way, you know, and everyone's wired differently, and so there's things that can really stress me out. And when we first started on the road, there was a pretty long list of things that would get me stressed out. You know, we left our first year on the road in a vehicle that I barely knew, my first diesel vehicle, 6 tons, and started driving around the country. You know, I had scheduled to work the sugar beet harvest our first year, which we did. And then after that, I scheduled to volunteer at the van build 2019 that was held up in Parker. It was the last one of those. Jamie, a guy that used to be out here on the road, put that on, and I was there on one of the solar teams. So I started my traveling kind of similar to how I lived my life, work, schedule. You know, I had these things scheduled before we even left town. And we started driving around the country. I've always loved driving, and that was like one of my motivations for doing what we're doing, is because I always liked road trips, you know. And we would get out. I remember vividly some of the times when, you know, we'd come up over a mountain or a hill, and out in front of us would be nothing for as far as you could see. No towns, desert roads, and I would, you know, get like, oh my gosh, you know, what if something goes wrong on the rig? I didn't know the vehicle enough back then to have confidence in it, but as the years went on, it took me about 18 months, 2 years to get really comfortable with the rig and its mechanics and all that, and feeling like that I could trust it, you know. You know, now fast forward all these years later, and I drive this thing like I get in and turn the key, and I don't really have any thoughts of mechanical failure. You know, obviously a lot of things have been replaced, repaired, you know, brakes, bearings, suspension, engine components, you know, for accessories, sensors, all of these things that I've done over the years that have made me be a lot more comfortable with the rig itself. But there's one thing that always hangs around in my mind and a lot of people that have RVs, and that's fire, you know, having a fire. You know, I have, and a lot of people have, a lot of power in the battery systems, the solar systems that we have in our vehicles. And if there were to be a short in my system, for example, absolutely enough to start a fire, you know, cause total loss. The reason I'm talking about this, and I mentioned it earlier that some of you may have already heard this, but on New Year's Eve, late in the evening, actually close to midnight, there was an RV fire right across the road and just east of us, maybe a tenth of a mile from us as the crow flies. And, you know, I slept through it. I didn't know anything about it. Lefty and I both slept right through it. And then one of my friends the next morning said that he was up, and he said that it just lit the whole sky up, the fire, you know. And there's some photos that people caught that were camped in the area over there, little video clips and such, and it was you know, fully engulfed. It was a tow behind. It looks like, from what's left, that it was a good size fifth wheel, possibly, because it had one of those decks that came out the back. My friend Chris has one on his trailer over here. You know, the back door, it's like a toy hauler style, so the back door actually flips down and it's a ramp, and you can put motorcycles or, you know, things like that up in the garage. And then that door, you can leave it in a level position, horizontal, and it becomes like a little outside deck. And I flew the drone over. So as you look at this video that I captured, you can see that it has one of those decks out the back, which tells me that it was a toy hauler style, which are typically the larger type of campers. And you can see the pickup truck there that was used to tow it. I'm sure it's a 4-door pickup truck. And, you know, fire has always been, I try not to think about it. I know how I've done all of the wiring in my rig. Everything is fused, circuit breakers. So even if something as simple as like the ceiling fan, which draws minimal amperage power, even if that has a short in it, it's fused, it will pop the fuse. My batteries are fused within, the ideal is within 18 inches of the batteries, the cable that comes off the batteries, the main single cable that comes off of my batteries, it's within 18 inches of the batteries themselves, the large blow fuse. So if there's a short big enough, those batteries will disconnect from everything, and that fuse will blow. So I've said this in past videos, you know, the more things that you add to your vehicle, the more systems, right? The more wires that you run, the bigger the chance of a failure. You know, if you've only got one thing wired up, you have a low chance of a failure. But if you have 50 things wired up, you have a bigger chance of one of those things having a failure. And every time that we've come across, like when we came across that burned out Airstream trailer up in Colorado, it made me go back and look at all of my wiring and check my tightness on my large cables to make sure they were all still tight, because a loose cable connection, that friction can cause a problem, can actually cause enough heat to start melting things. So I always go back through and check as many things, that I have access to. All of my electric items, DC powered, they're all fed off of bus bars, so I can go to those bus bars and check the tightness of all of the posts and make sure that they're all tight. All my fuses are good, obviously, because everything is still working. And I think to myself, it's been, we've been a lot of years out here on the road, and have I had any electrical failure? I've never blown a fuse on anything. I had the issue with the stereo, but that's an RCA cable which carries no power. It carries an audio signal. I guess there's some type of power feeding through that, but it's not enough to cause any kind of problem. So that's not, I wouldn't call that technically an electrical issue. It was an audio issue, really. But I can't think of any electrical items that have caused me a problem. Now, the biggest scare that I had was propane related. The regulator on my stove. I went through 2 regulators on that Camp Chef stove. I replaced the first one with another Camp Chef regulator. It went bad. So then I bought a different brand. There are other brands that are identical copies of the Camp Chef regulator, so I got a different one, and that one has been perfect. It's been 2 years now, and it's had no issues. From what I've heard with people that were camped close by over there, that they believe it was propane that started the fire, that there was an explosion, but the explosion could have been after the fire already got going. So I'm not exactly sure what started the fire. And the worst part of all this, and I've heard this from people that I know that were camped right in the area over there, within sight of that burning camper, that the gentleman that was camped in it and his dog were both inside, and that they passed away in the fire. But from what the people in the area over there have said is that the man and his dog passed away, that they saw him go in the camper for the night and then never came back out. And someone told me when the emergency services showed up, and they did respond, but I mean, the thing was, the video I saw, the camper was just fully engulfed, and that happens so fast. They go up, they're fiberglass and wood construction, and they burn up so fast. But when the emergency services arrived and law enforcement, that they were focused in on a specific area of the camper and taking a lot of photos and all that. And that, to me, that is so scary. And I don't think I'm alone in anyone out here that has done their own wiring of any kind, or propane system connecting of any kind. I know I'm not alone, because I've had conversations with some of my friends, and they've all had different comments about how they feel about the threat of having a fire in their rig. And everyone has it in the back of their mind. Everyone does. So I know, like in my rig electronically, I always, whenever I'm connecting up a new system and running wiring, I always felt like I was you know, going over the top, like, because I would make a connection and heat shrink it and then tape it and then wire loom over it, you know, just trying to do everything I can to make sure that there's no friction between wiring, that my connections are all good and they're not going to come loose and cause a problem. And, you know, after so many years, I use my systems that I've wired in here, I use them without even any thought. You know, I click my inverter on and everything I use, because it's been so many years and everything has worked so well for all those years. And so I have to feel like that I've done my wiring well. But that doesn't mean that I can become complacent and not keep my eye on it, you know. And each time, like I said, that one of these fires happens, or we see that a fire has happened, I go and start looking all around my system, and I've already been through my DC cabinet in here and checked my bus bars. And next I'm going to go in on my battery cabinet on the other side. That's where my big power is, and I'm going to check everything over there. And the last time, all the times that I've done that, everything has been like just like when I installed it, you know. All the posts on the bus bars are just as snug and tight as when I first did them. But I'm going to go through it again, because as much as I've put aside a lot of the stress that I used to carry with me, seeing a fire, hearing about a fire, seeing the remnants of the fire is enough to make me start just making sure that we're not going to have any issue. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. Be a good boy. And I'm really sad for the gentleman and the dog that passed away over there. No left. No. As soon as I'm done talking with y'all, I'm going to get back up in here to have some breakfast, and I think I'm going to turn the heater back on. It's like 50 degrees out here, and we're going to have some really cold nights coming up, I noticed. There were some down in like 40 degrees in the forecast. That's chilly. That's about as cold as we're going to get out here. So thank you all for being here with us today. Everyone take care, be safe, and we'll see y'all again real soon. You want to come inside? Oh, are you cold? Are you shivering?